at, as early as when couples start dating, or if you're in a courtship for an arranged marriage, when you're starting to get to know each other, you make yourself interesting and you are also interested in the other person. And you actively do this during that phase or period of time. But how many of us in relationships actually, when we get to marriage or longer marriages, are still doing that? Keep yourself interesting and be interested in the other person.
So one of the things we do is we say, what do we do now? And what do we do soon? And what do we do later?
When people start talking about the beginning of divorce, it's rarely a clear decision point. What I most hear is fatigue, confusion, and a repeated need to revisit the why. So, can we recognize that divorce is not experienced as a single event, but as a long in between phase where you are emotionally exhausted, where someone is emotionally exhausted? And I'll answer directly to what you asked, but procedurally stuck.
Thank you for joining us today on our first offline event of My Divorce Guide. So as many of you all have been exposed to My Divorce Guide, we are looking at building India's first holistic divorce ecosystem, offering legal, wellness, and peer support to those navigating divorce. And today's session is about how can we support those going through divorce. And we have a panel of experts to guide us on this. I'd like to welcome Kalpa Karthik, who is an ICF relationship and family coach. She has a deep understanding of human behavior and emotional patterns. She believes that divorce is rarely caused by one event. It usually grows from small, repeated disconnections. Welcome, Kalpa. Then we have Ratna from Her Money. Ratna is a CFA and an expert in financial guidance. She also is a transition coach, financial transition coach. So she's here to tell us how one can navigate the journey of divorce. And we have Radha from IDARE. Welcome, Radha. Radha has got a dual master's degree, one from the applied, one in MSc in applied psychology and one in psychotherapy from Glasgow. She's been in Bangalore for the last 3 years, associated with IDARE. And she's here, she's a person-centered and lead therapist. And she's here she helps individuals and couples navigate relationships. And we have Paurama, the co-founder of My Divorce Guide, who will be moderating today's session. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev. Before we start off, I wanted to tell you guys that we have a table over there with a couple of flashcards and a bunch of pens. We have kept that there for you so that if you find insights that you want to take away with you back home, or if you want to share some feedback for the team, feel free to use that. There are also a couple of bookmarks we have there for you. I hope you guys like them and take some with you. And with that, okay, I guess let's give them a minute to, With that, I'd like to start off. First, I'd like to begin with this thing that food for thought. In what context do you most hear the word divorce? Take a second to think about that. For me, it's in the context of divorce lawyer, which we know is a legal process that you need to go through in order to get a divorce. Divorcee, an identity that is assigned to you essentially by the society at large. And divorce cases are on the rise in India. There's this Money Control article from last year which blew this conversation up. And we kept seeing this on all our feeds everywhere. So if you take a second to think about what I just said, this all talks about divorce as a legal process. Divorce as a part of the national or global statistics, and to talk about a divorcee as the place that they hold in the society in some way. None of this essentially talks about the person who's at the center of all of this. Today, we have come here to do exactly that, talk about the person who's behind, the people who are behind this legal process. To do that with us, we have the panel. Um, before I pass it on to you, Kalpa, I just wanted to mention a couple of questions from the people who are going through this journey, which prompted this larger conversation. Some of these questions are, I'm finding it very hard to accept mentally that divorce is now inevitable. My sense of self-worth and confidence have been impacted. How can I build a successful life ahead? How do I show up to work every day while I navigate this divorce back home? Can I ever move on? With that, I'd like to talk to you, Kalpa, and understand from you the focus, understand from you the nature of relationships and what causes them to unravel.
Sure, thanks, Brahma. I think like the introduction said, divorce is rarely caused by an event. It is usually a series of bids and connections that have gone wrong in the relationship. If you look at, as early as when couples start dating, or if you're in a courtship for an arranged marriage, when you're starting to get to know each other, you make yourself interesting and you are also interested in the other person. And you actively do this during that phase or period of time. But how many of us in relationships actually, when we get to marriage or longer marriages, are still doing that? Keep yourself interesting and be interested in the other person. And I think that is one of the, perhaps the fundamental reasons that a connection is lost between the couple or a relationship, right? Having said that, a lot of people also assume that the relationship will work on its own, right? Everything will just happen, everything will fall into place. Just because we are married, things will go, be all right, and then it comes, we'll have children, everything will be fine. But that basic assumption itself, I believe, is flawed. Yeah. Because relationships do require the work to be done, and you need to maintain or keep building that connection. Then it brings us to those two words, what is that connection? What does that connection mean? Connection really is finding joy with each other, having meaning with each other, and being relevant to each other. I think connection is that between two people. And the work in the relationship is really towards these three things. How do we find things that bring us joy together? How do we be more meaningful towards each other and find meaning in each other's things, what we are leading? And how do I find you relevant to me in the relationship as well? And that relevance is actually coming from being seen, heard, valued, and accepted. That's really the relevance we're looking for. So as the relationship progresses, the importance has to move towards these things of being connected and actually working continuously to building this as well. And to feel safe in a marriage. I think that connection is equally important. Often, people show up in the best versions when they go to work, when they are guests at home. You come up and show up in best versions. But how many times are you playing the best version of yourself at home or to your partner? Are you the best version at home? Perhaps not, because you associate home or your relationship with this comfort place. I want to come back to this every day, feel comfortable. I don't want to do the work at home. If I have to assume those roles at home, what's the point in being home? But truly, when we get very comfortable, we don't work forward. And there is no chaos because it's all comfort. From chaos comes growth in the relationship, essentially. And in a marriage, the two people have to grow. Every time there's chaos, there's conflict, is an opportunity to grow. And if we don't think of it that way, there is no relationship after some time because we haven't grown together, essentially. So for me, I think divorce is really not so much about conflict in a relationship. It's not even having no love in the relationship. The love is enduring, or not even the concept of losing love in the relationship. It's actually two people who have grown out of their identities and have not found the same structure together at a later point in life. And for me, that's just growth that's not happened together.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for adding that, Kalpa. I'd really like to move on to you, Ratna, and hear you speak a little bit about what Kalpa has added to the conversation. I'd like to prompt you with something, which is that we know that a lot of times when people worry about leaving a marriage, the worry is a lot from the perspective of financial safety, right? I'm okay here. I don't have an income outside of this independently, and yeah, and I'd like to hear quote someone, actually Ratna's, sorry, Radha's colleague Mohana, who said something very interesting, which I found very moving personally. Marriage is the safety net. People often fail to create that safety net for themselves despite the marriage. I'd like your comments on that, and also add to what Kalpa just told us.
Let me first start with what Kalpa mentioned. That we are talking about, and I think from your first question, with can I move on? So very simply, divorce is a transition, and I coming from a transition coach kind of perspective, I'm going to talk about how in life we have many transitions. Somehow we are not touching the point of getting married itself. That itself is a transition.
Of course.
When you are alone, you're working, you're earning, you're living life in a particular way in your comfort zone, and suddenly you jump into a relationship and everything changes. You suddenly have to make adjustments, you have to make things. So that itself is a transition. So am I going to be okay? Well, if you've been okay into the marriage, you might be okay out of it as well. So it's just another phase is how I would refer to it in life. It is a transition. There will be change. What I mean by transition is basically change, various phases of change. And therefore, you will have to go through some amount of pain, some amount of discomfort, some amount of difficulty within yourself as well as with the people around you. And then that change will happen. So that is part one. Part two is financially being safe is again something that we work on with people before you enter your marriage itself, is where we like to work with people and say that if you look at it traditionally, right, our roles were so beautifully defined in a sense. And this is not just in India, it was across the world, where the man was the one who was earning and the woman who was running the home, and they kind of distributed the responsibilities, and then they made time for each other, as she said, for being together. So you're like a team, and your families have come together to raise the kids, and therefore like an organization, put it like that you share responsibilities. It's not like there are no responsibilities we don't share. When that has changed, and that has changed socially across, in fact, when I was looking at the data, Bombay and Bangalore seem to be the highest divorce rates in India. And that's also because of the economic empowerment. What that is doing is it has changed the way we look at the traditional roles. And therefore, while men have not completely moved on to becoming, the kind of roles that the women did, and women are taking on the roles of, actively working, earning, and contributing. And then when you come back, you're trying to define the balance at home, plus having the energy. And I think a lot of the reasons cited for divorce was, where is the energy? You're exhausted at work, two people, and then you come back and you still have two kids and you still have so many things to run. So finances become very, very critical. What is the purpose of all of this? What is the purpose of working and earning? I want to know. So is it just to prove that I'm capable of, so we forget, why are we doing it? And that's where the finances play a big role. When you have your goals defined, I'm doing this because I want to earn so much. I'm doing this because professionally I want to achieve so much. I'm doing this because I have two kids whom I want to educate so much. Education has become expensive, sorry to say. Life in metro cities are expensive. So when we can change that narrative about who I want to be, why am I doing this, then in that context, everything falls in line. And again, because of the traditional definition of roles, the tendency, and you can't take that away. In the work we do, we constantly meet women who say, look, I freeze when I see an Excel sheet and numbers. I can't do finance. It's not my subject. It's a very common refrain I hear from women.
That's actually, yeah, I'd like to add to this how even like career women often defer to their husbands and fathers
Absolutely. Even to this day, I have very, very good friends in very, very senior positions who've come back and said, you know what, I can't do it. He does it. Which is fine as long as you come up as a team. But the point that I'm trying to make is, are you a team? Do you have your separate, some parts segregated? And are you taking decisions? My goal always has been to teach the women to take the decisions, to be, to come on the table as when you are a unit as a family. So those, and therefore safety becomes an issue. Because when a woman is freezing constantly at numbers, and if she feels threatened for some other reason in a relationship, then this becomes the biggest fear. Because she knows she cannot do anything on her own. And she's not aware. I mean, it's sad, but the problem is there when she does not know what to do or what not to do. Men are equally insecure when it comes to finances, especially when it relates to a divorce. They know that they will become the weak person because, she can sue me for large amounts of money. And there have been cases where, men are suddenly like, whatever I had, I have given away after the divorce. So it's not really, easy for either party in these, in the case of a divorce. So the way I see it is, finances are very, very critical when you're thinking of a divorce pre, during, and post. Legal fees are not going to be cheap, come what may, especially if divorce proceedings go long. And these are not even nice things when it's in the law. So there are, of course, various methods of doing it. But it's a very critical aspect of what happens in a relationship, especially when it comes to money.
Thank you for that, Ratna. Let's move to Radha for a second now. I'm so sorry, I'm hogging this one. Radha, I'm so sorry, I just keep messing up your names. It's very similar sounding. So yeah, Radha, I wanted your inputs on what we heard from Kalpa and Ratna here. Before we start off, like we broadly spoke about the part of the relationship before divorce is uttered, essentially, right? And here, someone. We spoke to one of the therapists that we work with, Subhashini, said something very interesting, which is how much am I, no, sorry, let me rephrase that. Am I suffering enough to consider divorce as an option? So I'd like your comments on that and also broadly what we spoke about.
Good evening. Let me begin by thanking Pammy, Sanjeev, and the rest of the team for organizing this beautiful gathering. May I? And thank you to each one of you for joining us today on a Sunday. Trust me. So, see, I'm going to answer. I loved those set of questions that you prompted us with, right? They looked quite comprehensive in terms of concerns that we mainly face when we are facing, a predicament such as separation or divorce. And I'm sure I'll, complement what was spoken so far, yeah, if I may. Okay, so when people start talking about the beginning of divorce, it's rarely a clear decision point. What I most hear is fatigue, confusion, and a repeated need to revisit the why. So, can we recognize that divorce is not experienced as a single event, but as a long in between phase where you are emotionally exhausted, where someone is emotionally exhausted? And I'll answer, directly to what you asked, but procedurally stuck. For many of us, it's the first time, right? And we have no clue. So I see that many people are living in this predicament for months, years, and often that prolonged uncertainty I've seen with clients as well ends up causing more distress than the rupture itself. Yeah, and so let's say they are talking to a friend. The friend might notice that they are repeating the story again and again, or they are questioning their decision again and again. So this is not, can I say that this is not a sign of indecisiveness, but it's an attempt to make sense of something that has already been breaking. So can I begin from there? So divorce cannot represent a person, or a person who's, let's say, come to the table, come on track, on the divorce track, doesn't mean that it's a clear, like an aha moment, one fine day, it dawns on you that no. I see that, I think you've also mentioned it, that I think Mona, I call her Mo, sorry, Mo brought in that it is, you expect it to go a certain way, but then what pans out is what we all end up facing. So now I want to directly answer what you said, right? Should I suffer enough? Now, I'm not going to give you any new surprising answers. The answer is, it is deeply subjective. Have I hit the threshold of tolerance, psychological tolerance, financially? I, to be honest, finance is the last thing I've seen people consider, to be honest. Though research might say a certain thing, but I see that finance is the last thing. First is, most often, I've had enough. At least something within me, I cannot stay blindsided to that anymore. And that's when you decide to finally look outside of yourself. Is there something I can really, is there someone I can talk to, I can rely on? And I'm so proud of ecosystems like ours emerging. I loved what Sanjeev, how he introduced my divorce guide. That would exactly be similarly how we would introduce IDARE, like an ecosystem of resources that is there in case someone wants to take that leap of faith, or you want to figure out along the way. Did I answer? I don't know. And I want to ask you.
No, it's what comes up for you when you hear this, right? It's like not really about.
Okay, so I'm the judge.
You are the
I
judge,
think
yes. So yeah, thanks for talking us through that. Next, I'd like to come to you again with what happens when one starts saying the word divorce out loud. So now we know that the relationship has ruptured, as Kalpa walked us through, and then the couple is considering divorce. And also, let's say litigation happens, and then they are going through the process. There's a life that unfolds outside of the courtroom, right? And like you mentioned earlier, one theme that keeps coming up when we are also talking to our clients is the element of fatigue. I just wanted you to talk us through that a little bit, and what goes on from your insights of talking to people in that state.
I might have to give you a bit of context before
For sure.
you directly hear the answer from me. Is that okay?
100%.
Okay. So I'm going to bring in a term called identity shift here. Okay, so research says we make sense of who we are primarily two ways. One is we think on our own, self-reflection, self-awareness, self-understanding. But we also make sense of ourselves in relation to the other, hyphenated. So can I say that relationship spaces are primarily a gateway or a pathway for us to even figure out ourselves in terms of self-actualization, self-fulfillment. I hope I'm not speaking Greek and Latin, okay?
Here, I'd like to pause you for 1 second and just talk to the audience that what Radha said. Can you think for a second about how you make sense of yourself through the relations around you? And I just wanted to say that. And after
Tammy,
you,
don't hit me. I want to add one more thing before they start their thinking wheels start churning. Okay. So every research says the number one factor that contributes to life satisfaction and fulfillment is relationships. Can we pretend, can we stop pretending that, it doesn't matter? It does matter. At least research says. Okay? In addition to other things, I'm not saying relationships are the only space, but there is a reason why when there is a rupture, when things don't pan out according to plan, we start freaking out. Now I hope that we can give ourselves a little bit credit there. There is a reason why. Now, of course, I don't know, you still want the audience to...
No, I just want them to think. It's not that we'll come to that interaction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'll come, I want to set the premise a bit before I answer your question. So as a person shifts from that emotional rupture, that bond that Kalpa was setting the premise about, right? That connection, the bond, at least that was the intention. So as a person shifts or moves from that emotional rupture into starting to consider or contemplate separation and legal processes, there is a no guesses there. There is a profound identity shift that goes on. Now, a common myth is someone has to be emotionally ready or strong before starting divorce. But can I say that in reality, most of us are not. Most people are not. And readiness can come from, I would say, readiness can develop slowly by taking small supported steps, but not before that. I'm sorry, I have to break it a bit. Okay, break the illusion a bit.
Go for it.
Okay, so readiness comes from action, from seeing evidence that there are ecosystems that can support you, even to figure out what's happening with you, right? So that's where that's at least the reality of many clients that I work with. Okay, now the anxiety. I'll now slowly break down the, at least I'll try, at least the major key things. The anxiety, the sense of feeling unanchored. You use the word safety net. I'm going to use the word anchor. So that sense of being unanchored, even that loss of confidence that people start talking about, I would say it's not weakness, but they are visible signs of, or you would say symptoms of identity disruption. Yeah. And I hope that answers at least partly.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
So when you're trying to figure out yourself in a relationship space, when you've invested your time, effort, money, everything, right? Families also get involved sometimes. So, and that suffers a rupture. You can imagine how the identity gets hit, and hence you hear the typical questions. Oh my God, who am I now? If you, even if you have figured it out earlier, who am I now? Like I heard one of you speak about the husband, ending up in a very bad state, prior to, yeah. So who am I now? What do I make sense of myself now? How do I make sense of myself? And can I say failure is also one of the words we use? No? I
Yeah.
have failed as a person because the marriage has failed. So I think I tried my best to make it as comprehensive as I can.
No. That was very helpful. Here, Kalpa, I'd like to come back to you. You spoke about the relationship between a couple which was pre-divorce, like they knew the identity that they existed in. Radha spoke us a little bit through a space where the couple is legally still identified as a couple, but then there's no emotional situation that exists between a couple essentially.
They are starting to look at each other differently.
Yes.
And I'd take a few keywords from here, and I think one of the primary reasons for divorce, one of them is definitely money. The second is parenting.
Yeah.
But to what Radha also talked about self, I think when we reach the stage where we are unsure of whether divorce is the way forward or if we're in the flux, it's primarily also because it's a lot of assurance of self. That identity of self is changing, and to be able to recognize where I stand for self right now is extremely important. In order to do that, it's not about that you have to forget the marriage, but how do I see myself larger than the marriage? And for that individual to see themselves larger than the marriage itself requires, like she said, a little bit of healing. I'd like to call it like a framework of 4 steps. The first step really is about stabilizing yourself, right? There is a story that I've lived with. There is deep trauma, pain perhaps. There's been fight or struggle in the marriage perhaps. So just to stabilize self, because there's so much which is procedure, like the words you've used before. There's procedure that's happening outside that just take a moment to stabilize self.
What does that look like? Can you just
It
help
would
me
mean
understand?
to regulate my emotions, which are fluctuating heavily. There are days I'm confused whether I want to go through the divorce. Should
Yeah.
I stick in this marriage? Should I opt in, opt out? So that would really mean that I need to start thinking what I'm feeling, how I feel about myself, how I feel in this relationship, and what do I want out of myself going forward as well. So I would think the stabilize word means regulate, heal, rest, because if somebody's been in a fight mode all through, so there are various versions of that, I would say, is stabilizing yourself. Then, of course, I think second would definitely be grief, which often people in that journey stop doing it as well. You need to grieve the version of you in that marriage, and perhaps the version of you that was not noticed in that marriage also. So you got to mourn the story, mourn the person, mourn the relationship, because you're going to start taking actions on that soon enough.
Yeah.
So I think grieving is part of that as well. So stabilize, grieve. Then is reclaim. There are parts that you need to reclaim in this story as well. Like, what do I want to take of myself going forward? So reclaim parts that were not visible, that were not seen, that were not appreciated, to understand self better. And that's where, when she's talking about the identity shift, and I think that's where you start getting that clarity of how this identity is going to slowly start shifting for myself. So reclaim those parts. And I think then rechoose. I would like to end the framework with saying rechoose. And when I say rechoose, it's not about finding a new partner. It's actually rechoosing your own version, your story of self.
I love that.
What's
yeah.
that new version of myself that I want to bring to the table and go forward with? Now, if that meant that I need to continue in the relationship of marriage, it would mean that I want the divorce and I want to go forward, but I still need to rechoose that version or story of myself. So I would say most often the individual will go through these four phases. In
Right.
some format or the other, perhaps not in this order that I have explained, but they do go through these things. And it's important that an individual goes through all the phases to actually reach a point where, say, I'm comfortable and I think I can make some decisions. And I do think money comes in later, but it does come at some point, which is a fear, a worry, or an anxious moment saying, how am I going to see through my life? Especially if there are kids involved, there are other family members involved. That's a larger story as well. But this really is self that you're focusing on. And there are traps to this as well. People get into the trap. If I'm here, often if I've taken the decision of going or ending the relationship, perhaps the first biggest trap that you end up yourself is getting into another one too quickly. The
Right.
second one, which comes up, is immersing yourself into productivity, which means deep down work. How do I avoid grieving what I've been through so you avoid grief completely, right? And the third one would be to very quickly rechoose another partner and repeat all the mistakes that you have made as well in the relationship. Because like I said, it's two people. It's not just somebody else's fault. It's two people that didn't or were not able to work things out together, and therefore very quickly going into. And these are some of the traps that people do get into while moving forward as well.
Right. Do you think that like this needs to be, as you were saying that I was thinking that this is a process that needs to be intentional, and as you say that like I can imagine it being natural for grieving to happen, right? But to get it out of your system intentionally, I feel is important.
I
Would
think
you?
grieving does happen. People do repeat it, like Radha was talking about. You go back and keep telling the same story, and that is grief. You're grieving it.
Yeah.
You're every time you say it loud, you will repeat it. You will accept the story first of all, and then when you say it loud, somebody else is hearing you, and hopefully just hearing you, right?
Yeah.
And we'll come to that part. But that's really grieving that moment, grieving yourself. It's important. And she also touched upon a little bit of resources. I think that's an important area. Activating your resources when in time of need, right? I feel unstable, so how do I look at resources that are around me and use them to help me go forward as well? So
Right.
I think the part that I was talking about stabilizing is really also that. Look at resources, heal yourself. You need to rest yourself. So get the input, stabilize, and then start thinking of making that decision as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very helpful, Kalpa. Can we come to you, Ratna? Since we touched upon the person going through the divorce process, especially in courts, we know that there's a system of interim maintenance, and post the divorce there's concept of alimony. Because of the cultural discourse, these have become very loaded words with like an emotional load as well. So I just wanted to bring this question to you, that because maintenance is kind of a loaded word, do you see people thinking differently while spending that money, investing that money? What are some of the behaviors that you notice of someone who's going through this phase?
So transition applies at various levels. As Radha put it, money is the last thing. Um, Again, depends on quantum of money. I will talk about one, I want to address that because it's important to address it. The first thing is when you're going through what we call a transition, right? If you see, we've shown you different 4 phases of transition. It applies in various situations in life. It could be marriage, it could be a divorce, it could be retirement. It's multiple places. Divorce is one of them. Now, what happens is your behavior is visible, and for those who are supporting people with divorce, you have to understand what happens. And I think one of the important things that people have touched upon today is identity. You kind of, so there are people who may not have an identity crisis. You may have or you may not have. Identity is one of the things which can be questioned. There are people who are terribly independent, and so you will not see an issue over there. It's possibly not challenged. The other thing is their thoughts and emotions, 2 different things. How are they thinking? How are they feeling? These are 2 things also where you can see. So there are people who could be hopeful, people who are feeling hopeless. You're feeling continuously positive or you're feeling completely negative. And it's not like one, it could be a combination of these. Okay? There's a fog. You're not able to think clearly and act, or you're very clear, very step-based, and you're moving. So it could be this, it could be that. So all of these things kind of tell you what's happening with that person. Now, when people who have avoided you till your divorce have suddenly become your besties, please invest in my company, I'm trying to do something today. Like family who were not really nice have suddenly come forward and say, hey, I'll help you with this, you help me with this. So all this is very, very common. Plans which were, not there, suddenly get created. Suddenly you think, oh, I will acquire this car because I suddenly have lots of funds. So that is common behavior. But then what I mentioned earlier, the identity, the hopefulness, the fog piece, all of these continue, especially when there is a settlement or a money. I'm not even talking about a settlement. I'm saying the whole money situation has changed for both parties. And that creates a lot of confusion as well, and a lot of changes as well. So the behavior is not consistent. So when we work with a client like that, it's not like you sit with them and say, you know what, you have to do this, this, this. It makes sense. It doesn't make sense. These are people who sometimes vanish. So we've had a client like that who will not be available when you are reaching out. So communication becomes an issue with such clients because you find it very, very difficult to connect with them, have a straight conversation about because finance is very structured. It's a very straightforward subject. Ye karna hai, aise karo, waise karo. You can't do that with those clients. So you have to just listen. We of course have our structures of do's and don'ts, and you should not let them do. So one of the things we do is we say, what do we do now? And what do we do soon? And what do we do later? And the now is non-negotiable. We already kind of know what has to be done now. So we push them only towards what they can handle, what is not overwhelming, what is not adding to their stress levels. Then we make a list of, we'll discuss this soon. And once we get them to those action points of what has to happen first, then we discuss the other things. So this is a technique we use to make sure that we address their issues, but we, like she said, when you're feeling, when in your space of emotion, this whole money conversation is not going to get you anywhere. Nobody wants to have a money conversation. Money is not something people like to talk about. I mean, even today in India, it's a taboo subject. Where do families talk about money? So nobody wants to talk about it. But it's an integral part of who you are. I mean, you can't think of, and like I said, when you're going through a divorce, the first thing you need is actually safety, a safe space. And when I say a safe space, is it a person you're speaking to, a place that makes you comfortable? How do you get there? Without resources, and financial is resources. Without those resources, you can't make that step to make yourself safe. You have to pay a counselor, you have to pay somebody else. If you go to your parents' house, if you're socially not accepted, you can't go to your parents' house. Where do you go? Socially, if it's a taboo thing, then you're just feeling all these things. Who do you go to and say, hey, listen, I'm feeling all these emotions, so, you please listen to me? Who's going to do that for you? So, and sorry to say, you need financial resources to do anything. Whether you sit in your parents' house, parents would have said, ki, shadi kara diya, we've sent this person off, she's come back, or he's come back. Now, what is he doing? Why am I dealing with this? That's the mindset of the parent as well. Nothing wrong. They would have said, I'm done with my responsibilities. Why am I having to deal with it? So that approach will happen. So where is the safety coming from? So at least if you have some financial resources, you at least know that I can do this. If you stay in a friend's house, you are welcome for 2 weeks. If you extend beyond that, somebody will say, what are you doing here? And where are those safe places? So definitely you need your security, some net to make you comfortable and safe. Without that, you can't really survive. So I hope I've answered the question that you raised as well.
Yeah. I also wanted to come to you with another thing, which is, I think we spoke about this on our call before this, which was money being used as a tool of control, especially when the decree has been received, right? The divorce decree has been received, and then there's a conversation on alimony. Someone's like, I'll teach her a lesson, I'll teach him a lesson. This is, I mean, this is a part of the discourse in contested situations. There's a lot of situations which don't come to this, but money is often used as a tool for control. I'm sure as Kalpa and Radha will also help us understand that sadly child custody becomes another thing. So I just wanted to understand your thoughts on that.
That is common. I mean, it's money is it's a need as well as greed, and it's a very difficult to draw that thin line and balance when you work with money, which is why creating your independent spaces before and always is very, very important. Having said that, at that stage you need to take a call. There are times when you have to take a call. What was the whole purpose of this? Was it because the relationship was anyway gone and you want to create a new life? And for relationship is again one aspect. It's always about yourself. Relationship is in context to that. Am I stronger than the relationship? That's when you can actually make a relationship work as well. So here the question is, what do I want out of this whole thing? Why did I get here in the first place? What is the purpose of all of this? If and what is the purpose of that alimony? How is it helping both? So in any negotiation, if two parties come together to have a conversation, you can make things work. It's difficult, yes. That is why we have professional experts, and there are many who even help in this space. And of course, this whole thing about co-parenting, the processes and things, there's so many things in this area, right? So you will have to work with experts if you are not able to sit at the table and have a conversation. But it's important that you, like I said, now, soon, later, but close those tick boxes. What is it for? I mean, if you've decided to move on, then you need to create a life rather than stopping it. So look at how you can recreate life, how you can do things better, and that is for each party. If it's so, is it used? Well, yes. Money always creates problems in a certain sense. It's again a need base, so one has to handle money with the right approach, I guess.
Thanks for that. Radha, could we come to you for a bit? So, as Kalpa spoke about, when one is rebuilding their lives after the divorce has happened, she talked about an element of healing, and I'd like to hear your take on that and the journey that one experiences after this. I think one of the questions that I prompted before this was that, yeah, can I move on? There's another element which just came to mind is that there are some people who talk about, I still miss my partner, miss my own life. So, yeah, I'd like to hear your take on that.
Absolutely. So I hope I'll be forgiven if I retrace a bit, I missed
course.
out on two things, and both of them inspire me to talk about it. One is I want to start off with litigation. I want to bring in litigation here, okay? I spoke about the fact that most of us are not certain or ready or we have full clarity, before we even decide to take help or go on this path. So, can I just say that litigation intensifies it a bit? I want to start off from there. Litigation intensifies that struggle a bit because it demands composure, strategy, clarity. Where at a time when a person's inner world is crumbling or is fragmented, to be honest. So I want to start off from there. Second, many financial questions that come up in now, right, at every stage of this. Can I say that for me as a therapist, I'm going to bring in the mental health angle here, okay? They are most often about safety, control, and fear of an uncertain future. Now, there is a reason, I would say, I'm going to bring in brain physiology. I promise you I won't put you to sleep. There is a reason why.
We'll hold you to this.
Okay, so wake them up, please, when they are snoring. Okay, so there is an element of brain physiology that is responsible for why she brought in emotion. Ratna mentioned the word emotion. When there is an escalation of threat, my life is under threat, my future is under threat, my capability to be in relationships is questionable now, my identity is in crisis mode, right? So when you sense or perceive a feeling of threat, the brain automatically gets into that threat facing mode. So an interesting phenomenon called amygdala hijack happens. I hope some of you at least can go back and read about this. I think Daniel Goleman made it quite famous through his emotional intelligence book. So when there is a perception of threat, brain shuts down, okay, and it protects its most precious resource called the PFC or the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thinking, logical thinking, creative thinking, for assessing reality for what it is. All of them go for a toss because now the body wants to face the threat. And how does brain फिर भी काम चलाना है, तो how does the brain do that? It resorts to the basal ganglia, which is the seat of habits. So habitual thinking patterns, you'll notice the same loop of thoughts repeating. My life is a failure, I am a failure, there is no way out. And I'm not mocking. I'm just showing a mirror to the same loop repeats. There is a reason now, right? So the brain resorts to basal ganglia where habitual thinking patterns are stored. Now, I'll come to then what is the way out? So you are perceiving a feeling of threat. Everything is under threat now. Now, how do I get back on track? That's where support systems play an incredibly invaluable role. Be it the supportive presence of a friend, a family member, ecosystems like ours who come in with the best of intentions, who are saying, hey, look at us, we are an ecosystem of, we're not just saying one, we're not just offering one. So we are offering an ecosystem of support here. That's where slowly the de-escalation of threat happens. And when they speak to a therapist, they speak to a transition coach, they speak to a relationship coach, slowly, and to my divorce guide and safe spaces like that, slowly you start to see evidence that perhaps there is light at the end of the tunnel. Perhaps I can start tunneling even, right? So that is when that starts to happen, and then engaging in even plans and strategies start to happen. Sorry, I brought in a bit of brain physiology.
No, that's completely fine.
Okay, now.
I was just looking to see if
you-
anyone's
okay,
asleep.
Okay, if you want to.
No. Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Of course, then promise you'll give me the mic. I want to answer her original question.
I just want to share a real story which I was handling at one time about this. Because we talked about finances, we talked about safety. Is a woman who actually simply ran away from home and and then reached out to me. Was feeling completely threatened, unhappy, unsafe, landed up, and she doesn't have a father. So she lost her father and see, even that, when you lose a loved one, is also a transition space, okay?
Yeah.
It's what we call transition. So she lost her father about a year ago. And so in a sense, her mother herself wasn't so very comfortable on her own. And it was just a situation in her in-laws' place with a child, and she was just extremely frightened and went away. You're talking about money being used as a sense of control. Her husband threatened her that I will, put a police case against you, and all the gold that actually belongs to her, herself, which her parents have given her, that they will take that away. Now, why am I telling you this? This is a common refrain, and I've heard this kind of a story about what the parents give a woman, having been taken by their in-laws in India. I have heard this many times. It's not just once.
Yeah,
So
they
is
hold
it
it
used for
hostage.
control? Sorry to say, yes. And I have heard women who've come to me and saying, I know I shouldn't be doing it, but I've just given it. Right? And that's the safety. Traditionally, we did have a method by which Indian families had this thing that, we gave it so that the girl was safe for her safety, if ever, kind of a thing. But that has, there are cases which I hear, again, I'm not naming people and things, but I have heard of these one-on-one from people where they have said, we shouldn't do this, but we have. So this does happen. It's a known thing. So here's the mic back.
I have a feeling Kalpa is sitting quiet for some time. She might fight for a while. So I'm just giving, in case you have a question.
To your versions or answers that have come up, I think that's where it is important to understand what kind of support structure you want to frame yourself around, because it's not a blame game. I don't perceive the breakdown of the relationship as something that he did or she did, or how much money to say that it is a threat for somebody who doesn't have the money, or it is also a threat for somebody who's going to give away all their money. It is a threat for both sides. And therefore, I think who you surround yourself with, and that entire support, whether it's family, friends especially, is equally important in this case, because that is how you will start the prefrontal cortex will start working, because you are now feeling safe. So I would say the entire rebuilding stage or support is actually about feeling safe first, right? And that is something that family and friends need to sort of bring forward. Safety first, emotional, then comes to when they're understanding about financial matters or making some important decisions will come in.
I just want to add, I was just sharing this story for you to know that what does also happen. A couple of years later, the girl is fine. When I'm saying threat and I'm talking about safety, I'm just saying it's how the person is feeling. It's not necessarily, she was shaking, and he would have said in anger, he would have said something for sure. Couple of years later, of course, she's come out of her whole issue, and she's back with the family, in the sense that they're separated, but they're okay. But it's just to share that that's how the person is feeling, when they're absolutely down and out, and everything is exaggerated in a sense, because it's a feeling. It's coming from that feeling of unsafe space. But once she was safer, once things were settled down, she did reach out. Finally, there was lawyer, there was police help, everything. And once she settled down, suddenly, things changed. Her own perception of what she wants from the rest of the family changed. So there's no right or wrong about it. My own purpose of saying whether money is used for control, but these are again real stories which I have heard where women have, I would say, willingly given up also. No, if you want to keep what your parents have given you, it's just for you to be aware that if you ever want to protect yourself, you should possibly keep it safely for yourself. So that's a learning for those who, instead of being in a situation later that I did not create a safety for myself. So just a learning piece, but absolutely right on that.
Do you mind passing it on to Radha? And I wanted to add one thing to what you said, and thank you for saying that, because threat doesn't have to be someone like actually attacking me or something like that. Like, it's your perception of threat, right? I remember, like, from school, there's this one time in school that I was cheating off of someone's paper, and the teacher caught me and they told me that we are gonna confiscate this paper, you're gonna fail this subject. And that felt like such an attack, threat. Like, what is it, like, who will I be if I fail this subject, right? Like, I was very young, but that felt like a. So I just wanted to add on to your point. It's my perception of threat. They weren't trying to hit me on anything of that sort, but it's very important to make that distinction. So thanks for bringing that up. Radha, let's.
Finally, I have the mic, I'm holding on to it. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I want to latch on to what you said last. Okay, so in therapy, there is a kahavat, there is a saying that it's not the situation alone, but what meaning or interpretation you make of it or you give to the situation. That I'm stating the obvious, of course, all of you must be aware of this by experience, but it's not the situation in itself, but what meaning or interpretation you make of the situation that contributes to your state of distress. So in therapy, we also look at beliefs, thinking patterns that get triggered in the process, and of course identity. Sorry to sound like a broken record, but now I want to answer your question about rebuilding after. Can I speak
course,
about it?
yeah,
Is this
yeah.
a good
Yeah,
time?
yeah.
Okay. So rebuilding, as far as I've seen from my work with clients, I've seen that it's not linear and it's not triumphant. Yay! No. What I've seen is there is relief, there is freedom, at least for some of us. But alongside that, I see that there is loneliness, there is grief, and the uncertain future, that lies ahead. So, to be honest, for me, rebuilding your life after divorce, that is, I'll use layman's terms here. It's like I'm starting from scratch again. For many of us, at least with my clients, what I've seen is I'm starting from scratch again, starting with figuring out who I am,
Yeah.
and then recalibrating everything now. Okay, now my relationships with everybody also, and now assessing, evaluating, and then, of course, whatever they said, right? Figuring out the actual practicalities of it. Yeah. So, but it is never linear. It is never one jubilation or one celebration. Of course, there is celebration. And can I say that many of us have even forgotten in today's era, the focus is so much on what is not working and what I've lost and where there is scope for improvement. Of course, there is value, but many of us have forgotten how to experience positive emotions, and then in therapy, that is also one of the focus areas. Can we start experiencing positive emotions? Why I'm making a huge fuss is today research says that it has started to take a toll on us. Many of us, you see degenerative diseases on the rise, right? No doubt our focus on productivity and what works has fetched us rewards, no doubt. But as part of this process, one of the things that I also end up working with clients is to start almost from scratch. How do I live life again? How do I experience daily life again? How do I motivate myself to wake up from bed, get up from bed? So it starts from there, and to bring in self-identity, piecing together that jigsaw puzzle, roping in support from financial management experts, a life coach, a relationship coach. So at IDEA, for instance, we even have an abuse counselor to make sense of your experience. Some of us may not even know what has happened, or we may not have made sense of our experience. So at IDER, we have an abuse counselor, we have a legal expert, we have a life coach, we have therapists like me, and we have a support space as well. I just want to share it here. It's free of cost, and you can remain anonymous as well. But I realize that many of us go through distress, speaking of distress. And they may be at the office, they may be at home alone, they may be with friends, but suddenly there is escalation of distress, and I don't know what to do. Emotionally dysregulated, and then I'm sorry to say, I'm not to cause panic, but many of us resort to extreme ends, when I don't see hope. So we see value for mental health support there. So we have a separate section called support vertical, where through a call or chat, you can access mental health professionals' help. So that escalation of distress at least can be de-escalated. So I want to bring in that also here. Now, rebuilding. Parents, I've seen, carry an inordinate sense of fear and guilt about children. I'm stating the obvious. And there is also this pressure that I have to get everything right. I cannot afford to crumble because I have dependents. And can I say that what children need the most is not perfect parents, but emotionally available adults who can be present with them. Can I just say that? So I just wanted to bring in that angle also.
Of course, thanks for that. I think we have kind of naturally segued into the support segment.
Yes.
Could you please pass the mic to Kalpa?
I'm not studying.
Yeah, Kalpa, here I wanted to, because like we are all gathered here today to try and understand how we can support better. And what obviously helps is to understand the journey of someone going through that. I hope through our conversation we have been able to convey some of that. I'd like you to take us through what can a supporter do realistically?
I think based on the conversation we've heard so far, the supporter is meant to do all of these.
Yeah.
Like, Ratna mentioned that sometimes some clients don't have the money. You can have all the resources available in the world, but you don't have the money to avail those resources. You can't hire therapists, counselors, whoever you want to do this. Then you actually are just relying on your family and friends.
Yeah.
They are your biggest allies. They are your biggest supports. And I would say the fundamental role there of somebody who's supporting somebody going through a challenging journey would be to be non-judgmental to begin with, and not look at fixing things. Because when we have talked about rebuilding that version of self, all they want is somebody just to hear their story first, right? They want somebody to just listen. They again just want somebody to value them for who they are, right? And all of those things, when as family and friends we do that to other people, we actually are helping them feel safe first.
Yeah.
Safe to operate and make decisions which are financial related, which will impact their lives heavily going forward. But really that safety network is created by support of family and friends first. Then it is the other resources that you can hire so that they take you through the legalities or the procedures. But fundamental is that it is the word that she used, presence. Somebody who is supporting needs to be present. When I say they need to be present, it means they should not be looking at fixing. Somebody who is sharing needs just to be understood. And just being available. And in order for me to be available to somebody, I should be able to regulate my emotions first.
Yeah.
Right? Not get floored by what story they are saying or he is saying or she is saying. So how do I regulate my emotion? How do I stabilize myself so I can hear what they are saying and not influence my fears and anxieties over them as well?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is where then the blame game starts. He did this, she did this, or how can somebody do that to you? Because you yourself are unregulated. So I think as a supporter, you definitely need to be very conscious that you're feeling okay before you offer support. You're capable of just listening. And you're constantly checking in. I think one of the things is, because these people will be in the loop or repeat their stories multiple times, you need to be willing to listen or give that listening ear and be present and show up for them.
every time there is a call for help.
Yeah.
I think all these three would mean for me being present and supportive to somebody who's going through that process.
Yeah, that's very helpful because like one thing which is which feels almost inevitable is if someone's talking to you about their bad experiences, just either validate that or like try to jump in and try to solve it. So
Yeah. So listen without minimizing the experience because their experience is their own.
Yeah.
I may never had that experience while listening to their story. So don't minimize, but actually gently empower them to see what they can do going forward without minimizing what they're feeling, of course. And that would be something as fundamental as first listening
yeah.
to the story.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that. I just wanted to, because I believe you work with families a lot. I was wondering if there's anything from that space that you'd want to bring to this conversation about supporters.
I think the family, from a family point of view, and especially if somebody who's going through a divorce has a family, let's say they have children involved in this as well, it's even more critical to make that safety net wider for the children. So there should not be an encouragement of blame game because there is co-parenting that we've also talked about. There is money involved, sharing of resources between the two, the mother and the father. So I think that safety needs to be provided from a family context as well, where perhaps from the legality point of view, it's not a mutual consent, but at least from an emotion point of view, it should be mutual. Saying that, how do I safeguard the children from my own negative experience?
Yeah.
And not further hamper them and their lives going forward.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge impact on the family as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. Ratna, could you talk us through your experience of supporters being present? And when we talk about supporters, we are like keeping it as broad as possible. So we are thinking family, we are thinking friends, we are thinking colleagues. So yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective.
So I think one of the reasons we've kept the chart there is to understand when you look at those circles, it also is based on the kind of timelines. The sizes of those circles are based on the kind of time that it takes. And when we talk about passage, we talk about something like, it could be anywhere from 3 to 7 years. Why am I putting that in perspective is, I think what Kalpa said, two words which are very, very critical. One is safety and the other is listening, and listening without judgment. As I said, a person going through transition is going to have their emotions, their thoughts, and a lot of things sounding jumbled up. This will not be your friend or the family member that you knew. And therefore, it's important to be non-judgmental. Just let them be. Just give them a place where they can eat, sleep, drink, do whatever. I mean, complete safety of not, and we, again, I think Kalpa's brought it beautifully. I'm just going to summarize it that, about keeping your own ideas about what is right and what is wrong, which is the judgment, and your emotions out of that. Just letting that person be safe and listen. They need to be heard because they may seem to be going in circles. They just need to be heard because they will express continuously, and they need to feel that they can say this without, somebody looking at them saying, why are you doing this, kind of a thing. So that's all that they require. And of course, directing them to the right resources. Speak to this one who can help, maybe that one who can do something, somebody who can change a little bit for you. Those are the 3 basic things you need to do. I come from talking always about financial safety because a little bit of some safety. What do you have? How can you, keep yourself safe for whatever decision you take to make yourself safe? So if it means going and staying with your mother for a few days, or whether it's going and hanging out with another friend, do you have sufficient resources to take care of yourself? Maybe it's just a question that you ask, but essentially making them safe as you can. That's the only thing. Once you do that, they will obviously think and sort themselves out. They just need to feel comfortable and safe.
Thank you for that. Radha, could we hear your perspective on how a supporter can step in and help someone through this phase?
I'm going to give you as comprehensive an answer as possible, okay? So when we speak about supporters, again, I'm just summarizing, pulling on all the threads together. So I think it's important for us to recognize that the most important role of a supportive presence is not fixing or advising, but to offer steadiness, to offer consistency, and to provide permission. I would say permission. Permission for what? Permission to feel confused, permission to feel conflicted, permission to move slowly, permission to take steps without full clarity. Can I say that? And then across all the phases that we saw today, one thing that I've noticed is most people ask is not for answers, but for reassurance that what I'm feeling is okay. Is what I'm feeling okay? Is what they are, trying to make sense of. And I think that's a beautiful starting point for even emotional regulation, threat, de-escalation of threat, and all that. So a supportive presence offers the luxury of whatever they said, offers that luxury of safety and space, time, resources for the de-escalation of threat, for figuring out things. Of course, I'm not going to leave you without research, a bit of research. I don't know, how many of us have heard of journaling? Have you heard of journaling? Yeah? So research says that as you journal, like how does it help you, right? As you journal, you get new insights. It helps in de-escalation of threat and all that. Now, I want to bring in a bit of what research says because that is relevant for supportive presence as well. So I want to end with that, I promise. Now, journaling, they say that, like she mentioned, like Ratna mentioned, it is a jumbled mess, right? Invariably, our thoughts, our feelings are often a tangled mess, jumbled mess. And you would have seen that famous image, I don't know, a jumbled thread or a, those who do crochet probably will know. I don't do crochet, but I know that image. So what journaling does is it slowly helps you to unconditionally offer yourself that safe space to untangle the mess. So there is no judgment, there is no criticism, you're not critical of what is emerging. Slowly you're just letting your thoughts pour out. And trust me, that process is crucial for you to figure out things within quotes. So now coming to supportive presence. In a safe space, you remember I spoke to you about amygdala hijack? Amygdala is constantly scanning to look for cues for am I safe? Am I safe? Is there a threat? So when there is a safe space, slowly the de-escalation of threat happens. You're slowly able to untangle without being judged, without being rushed, without being asked, verified, right? So slowly you start figuring out things, and that is when slowly opportunities that were unprecedented, that didn't come up for you earlier, start coming up. So trust me, supportive presence has an invaluable role. As you can see, there is that element of brain physiology, there is that element of humanness, right, which only a human can provide. I know ChatGPT, we all ask ChatGPT questions, I know that, including myself. But a human's presence is sometimes medicinal or, like therapeutic, I would say. Yeah? Did I answer?
Yeah, of course. I don't want to get started on ChatGPT. I have very controversial opinions there. But I would really like to hear can we just pass it to Kalpa once? Your insights, if we could, because we have all gathered here today to try and understand how we as an individual can support someone. If I am not a big fan of top 3, top 5, whatever, but whatever comes to mind, what are the few things that come to mind as to what a supporter can do? And I also want to be mindful that there's something called caregivers fatigue. So you don't want to stress the person out who's just trying to help. So I'd like your opinion on that.
Yeah, on that caregivers fatigue, I think fatigue arises when you're trying to make the decisions for somebody else. But if you just consistently show up and listen, sometimes that's all you have to do. Fatigue arises out of the tiredness of wanting to make decisions or acting. But I think listening is fairly a simple task in that sense, which is also the hardest task to do, which is why. Right. And I think if I were to summarize, I would like to see the entire, we've been talking about this divorce phase. It's
And she said it's actually a developmental phase. It's of loss of something, it's an identity change, and then it's becoming something new. And in order to find that, you need supporters.
Yeah.
You truly do need people to support, to rebuild yourself, and to recognize that it is something that I changed. The two people changed. It's actually not just one person changing. Both people perhaps changed in their own ways and couldn't find a new way together.
Yeah.
And the minute it is perceived from that point of view, there is maybe less of blaming and just agreeing to say, we can move forward from there. So I think as a supporter's role, it's also important to bring that point of view, saying
Yeah.
you didn't agree about certain things together, which is okay, because you both were in different phases of your life or stages of life or developments or identities, however you want to phrase those words. But I think that's the perspective a supporter should bring in, if at all, share an opinion on, and not validate the pain, trauma, or anything otherwise that they went through.
Right.
Without minimizing, how can you actually acknowledge the change that has happened and what you need to do going forward?
Right.
Then.
Here I'm sorry I said this, I'm saying this after you, before. I didn't say it before you started talking about this, but there's a story that this reminds me of. Then this person's getting divorced. She's through the process. She's been in the process for 5 to 6 years. As a result of that, she's a different person right now because of the process, her stress, everything. She used to be very close to this cousin of hers, but this cousin, but he hasn't been texting as much or hasn't been in touch much. When she confronted him or spoke to him about it, he said, I don't know how to talk to you anymore. I'd like you to comment on that, please.
Because the person has changed.
Yeah.
Right? And as a supporter, it's important to recognize the changing of that person as well and accept them for who they are.
Yeah.
Because you're looking still for that older version of that person. And relationships can change. It's okay.
Thank
It's
you.
okay that I don't identify any longer with what you're saying. Because then
makes
you're
sense.
bringing your own judgment of that version that you want that person to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think acceptance is huge then. And you're looking for that acceptance from everybody
Yeah.
that's supporting you.
I think that's very helpful. Ratna?
So caregiver, I think, very important what you said about fatigue. Of course, if you are not going to contribute to the thoughts and things like that, and you can listen, listening itself is not an easy skill. It's something which a lot of people need to actually work at developing. It's a skill. If you're a caregiver, you should maybe learn that skill. One part. Second is you must learn emotional distancing for yourself. Yes, because it can get exhausting. I'm sure all of us agree in the kind of work we do when we are talking to our own clients. We space it out and we make sure we also understand the way we work, so we know we need to distance ourselves to clean up our emotions. So those two things are extremely important. You need to develop that skill for yourself. One is listening. The other is, how do I emotionally distance myself a little bit from this whole situation so that I am not hurting with the person I care for, definitely a need. Thirdly, it will require time on your side, because the person you're supporting will possibly be talking a lot or could be completely silent. Either could happen. And it might cause you some concern, at least, even if you're taking care. Completely silence has its own stress points, and too much talking is like, I need to sit here and listen. How much time am I going to spend doing that? So you need to, in your own head, know how much time you want to devote to this, and of course have a way of saying, okay, how do I tune off and not allow it to hurt me? So these are 2-3 things which will happen. And transition is a longish process. It's not a short process. It's not like somebody goes through a divorce and after that they let go of you. It may not happen, because when after they're rebuilding themselves, that's a long process, they will keep coming back to you. So you need to be aware that it's going to be a longish process. And if I've committed to this because I care for the person whom I'm helping out, then I am committing to it in some format or the other. And strengthen yourself to deal with that for that kind of a duration.
Thank you for that, Ratna. Radha, your thoughts?
So I'm going to bring in two new things, or I'd rather
Of
something
course.
different.
Of
Okay, just
course.
to complement, not to So first is I would say I might sound a bit revolutionary here, but let's say that you're trying to offer support, and something very strong is coming up for you as a thought or an emotion. I would like you to validate that and share it with as much honesty as you can and with as much sensitivity and sensibility that you can practice. Now, there is a reason why I'm saying this. Can I say that when, let's take any of us, okay? You want the conversation to be authentic, right? You don't want it to be fabricated. You don't want to sound plastic. You don't want the other person to be robotic, right? You want the conversation to be authentic, right? So in that sense, I would say if something strongly is coming up for you as a thought or a feeling, consider honoring it and consider voicing it with as much sensibility as you can. Now, I'll give you an example. Even in a therapy space, I'm a person-centered therapist, so I engage. My approach might be slightly different from the CBT, practitioners. So, there is something called congruence that I value the most. That
Okay.
is honesty with the client. Let's say something important, very strong is coming up for me. For me, that is a therapeutic tool that has therapeutic relevance. Let's say distress is coming up for me as I'm sitting with the client. For me, it would be a mirroring of the client's distress. And I would voice it out saying that, hey, you know what? I'm sensing this strong feeling coming up for me. I wonder if it has value or relevance for you. And then that gives the other person, I've seen, permission to then access their own pool of distress within. Okay, it's just one. I told you I'm a bit revolutionary. Second is, I would recommend this question to be asked: how can I support you best? Even before you start interventions and the list of to-dos and don'ts and all that, how can I support you best? What kind of help or support would be most relevant for you right now? Would you like me to listen to you, not as a robot, but as a human? I will be engaging in the conversation. I will be authentic. I won't play a passive role, but you want me to sit and listen to you first so that you can figure out that jumbled mess that we spoke about? Or do you want me to come in with insights now and then when you give me the cue? So, can we bring in that human, the benefit of a human connection here is what I'm wondering. Not to stay authentic, to stay meaningful, to stay relevant, and also sensitive. And there, I want to bring in what both of them said about being aware of your limitations, informing yourself with maximum about how a supporter's role can be most effective. Can we educate ourselves a bit before showing up in that person's space? Can we take a moment, pause, collect our thoughts, collect our emotions, right? So all that also is relevant. Yeah, I hope that helps.
It does, it does. Thank you so much. I'd like to go on to the audience and just check if we have questions from anyone in the crowd.
Yeah, hi. So, firstly, I just wanted to say that I thought the panelists combined really well because Kalpa ma'am, I think, walked us through the interpersonal connections aspect, and Radha ma'am walked us through the psychology of it all, and Ratna ma'am walked us through the navigation of the financial side of it. And there was all the bases were covered, but there was also a helpful amount of interconnectivity. My question is, I think, maybe best suited for Kalpa ma'am. And I don't think, maybe while I don't view it as a failure, I think the bigger loss is when you stay in an unhappy relationship as opposed to breaking free from one and getting that divorce. And with the societal and legal obstacles and stigma that exist, what's something that we can say to an unhappy couple or someone in a toxic relationship to encourage them to take that step and get that divorce?
I think if you're supporting somebody who's going through trouble, best would be to listen first. But if you are forced to take them through steps, if you've heard the conversation today we've had, those are quite a few steps that we've given you already. One is just to allow them to stabilize themselves, help them heal, help them share their story, listen to them, what the emotions are, what their beliefs or expectations out of that marriage was. Definitely give space for them to grieve to you as well, saying, this was part of me that was not found, lost. Help them reclaim it if you can. And because if you're looking for that marriage to go through, they will need to do this individually, reclaim parts of their selves or versions, and then rechoose. They will reach a point of rechoose for sure. And if they do decide to stay together, that's where they start rebuilding again. Of parts they disagreed on, what do they want now going forward. And I think as a supporter, definitely you can go through or take that couple through these steps as well, because they may not have access to anybody else outside of you. But I think some of these things can be done as friends and family as well.
Would you necessarily recommend, like, why being sensitive, like, a push in that direction if they're reluctant to move towards divorce in the first place?
I don't think anybody listening is in any position to make that decision because everybody's experience is different. If I'm going to tell you something to do, you may not even take my advice because then it's an advice. So I think listening and very non-judgmental, without minimizing their experience, if we can gently empower them to make their choices, which is providing a safe space like we spoke about, and then they will be able to recognize what's safe for them as against a third person telling what's safe for you to do. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Yeah. So, as somebody who's you all of you touched upon fears, insecurities, and how a support system can help somebody. It's also one of my questions was, there are like people dependent on us as well. There are parents. There are children. There is also a lot of expectation that we reassure all of them, right? That adds to the pressure a lot. So, how do we go about reassuring when times are challenging for us itself, right? So, it's a bit of this thing that, how do we reassure the people around us that, I'm going to be fine and I'm going to still be there for the kid and stuff like that. So, yeah, so that's something that it's not just financially, right? So you still have to be healthy enough for your aging parents and stuff like that. So if you can just...
It's part of what we also do as transitioning is what we call managing the expectations of the people around us. So I'm sure she can also add to it. But this is something which you can have a conversation one-on-one with the people who are impacted by these kind of decisions. And it's not going to be easy for sure, but having a conversation, understanding what the expectations of that relationship is, because there's one is this relationship which is possibly breaking, but then, as I had mentioned earlier, parents have just decided, typically that's the approach, traditional approach that, we raised our kids, we got them married, and we're not responsible for them anymore or their emotional well-being. But then when the kids come back, so that's where it's important to understand what is their expectation. If it's a parent, if I'm your son, then what is your expectation of my behavior as a son? If it's your sibling, what is your expectation as a sibling? What is it that will make you feel let down? So these are conversations you will have to build a little bit maybe on your own. Again, it's a question of timing. Is this the time you want to spend on it? If you do, you should. If you think you're feeling okay to have those conversations, you could. Again, I'll let these two experts, they are experts in this, but we also touch upon this.
Thank you for that question. It brings to my mind a couple who came for family therapy. So I conduct family therapy sessions as well, besides couple and individual. So it was the strangest of situations. They were planning of course, not so strange considering the context of today, but it was the most beautiful opportunity that I got to work with a family. Now, a couple walked in and they have a 4-year-old son, but the son didn't come to the session. They are already sensing ruptures in their relationship. They are sensing conflicts in the relationship, and they are clueless about how to manage the humongousness of the procedure that awaits them, the decisions that await them, what kind of resources can help them, and all that. So, first, can I say that I liked what one of us spoke today about right now, short term, long term. Right, Ratna, you spoke about that. Now, soon, and later. So, what kind of support do they need right now? Is it that I'll take of course, I'm protecting confidentiality here. Right now, they already had to make sense of conflicts in the past. They had to unburden themselves first, untangle that mess first. So they had to do that first. And then co-parent is something that came up a lot today, right? As they look forward to co-parenting, what kind of a future do they envision for their child, for them as co-parents? So we had to do a lot of, like, stage by stage. We had to work through it stage by stage. But can I say that, at the risk of boasting, trust me, I'm not. Can I say that that is where a professional space is valuable? Can I say that some of us try to take on the burden on ourselves, that I need to figure out the path ahead all on my own? And sometimes, can I say that even the best of us need professional help? And that is where you can assign the burden. I'm saying it as a burden, but that need not be a burden that you have to carry. I'm sorry. Yeah? So, first of all, trust a professional space. Find a reliable, trustworthy professional space first. Right? Number one, you've won half the battle there, trust me. Number two, look at what is needed right now, what is needed short term, what is needed long term. I'm talking about many sessions here. I'm not talking about a switch, right? But you are relying on an army of resources here, and you need not do the heavy lifting on your own. Okay, so this couple, first, they had to address conflicts in their relationship. I was witness to that beautiful journey, trust me. And of course, I didn't play a passive role. I played an active role in helping them set goals, expectations, what resources they needed to pull in at every stage, and even envisioning the future, trust me. So I had to work with mental health conditions that both of them were going through, right? And then slowly the path cleared. They then became capable of managing others. Can I say that? You have to build that resilience first. Yes, you have an intention of managing the whole world's expectations. No doubt, it is achievable, but not like a switch. First, can we look at what kind of support you need now? And what kind of an ecosystem can be helpful for you? And then once you de-escalate the threat, once the path starts clearing, you slowly become more and more capable of handling your child's dynamics with you, your parents' apostrophe on the outside, parents on both sides, expectations, and then societal, community, colleagues. Did I make sense?
I'd just like to add one thing. I'd just like to add one thing here, which is we did a webinar a short while ago about the impact of divorce on children, and something that came up was that children are very resilient. And just giving a thought on what staying and having a young person witness a conflict, what are you modeling for that kid? So yeah, I just wanted to bring that point up. I'm no expert, but this is like what I heard and I'm telling you. So.
Yeah, thank you for an interesting conversation, and it touched upon stigmas a bit, and considering that stigmas impact someone who's going through a divorce personally, socially, and economically as well. how someone as peers, we can help them navigate through stigmas.
I think when it comes to the stigma aspect of divorce, I think creating a story of self beyond the survival story is very important. So as the person is rebuilding themselves, often they talk about how they survived the trauma, the pain. But I think to navigate the stigma would be important to have actually a story of self beyond the survival. And that will allow you to see life and people to see you in a different light or perspective as well.
Yes, passing the mic to me. I'm guessing she's not having it. Wait for her.
So stigma is something which is in relation to your social context. And I think at the time that you're going through divorce, it's possibly one of those things. And that's why you're looking for a safe space. And which is why we always talk about safe space first, so that, the social stigma is a little away from you during that phase. So the one is to look for a safe space if you're, worried about social stigma and things like that. Today, I think the social stigma is actually moving a bit away. And all I can share are possibly real stories where we have seen. I mean, I've seen a divorce 25 years ago where both people are extremely happy for the last 20 years after having gone through divorce stigma, though. And in those days, it was definitely socially a huge thing, for people to accept. Since then, I think a lot has changed. So I can only assure you that the stigma per se isn't as bad as it seems. Again, it's the feeling of threat, the perception of threat. So finding your safe space is the first step to not having that fear of a stigma, is what I would say.
Okay, so first, can we recognize that stigma exists? Can we acknowledge that for still a majority of us, not the privileged ones, I'm sorry, even I don't think the privileged ones also escape. Can we first, number one, acknowledge that stigma exists? In therapy, there is something that I share with clients. You can only change what you acknowledge. You can only control what you acknowledge. So if you're going to stay blindsided that the world is absolutely a safe space and there is no stigma, sorry, we need a reality check. Yeah? So number one, stigma exists. Yeah? Number two, can I say that most of us are pioneers in seeking support, in seeking mental health support, in seeking a life coach's support, even with the decision of divorce. I'm daring to say this. With the rising numbers of divorce in this country, can I say that for many of us, it might be a revolutionary call to take. And I cannot imagine the opposition that we face in our homes, in our communities. Can I say that? So number one, stigma exists. Acknowledge stigma exists, and I'm here to validate that for you. Number two, we can be pioneers in this experience, in the sense there are no role models for us to lead the way. We are going to lead the way, even as a supporter. Can I say that? How many of us can go back home and say that I supported a divorcee? I don't think so. Still. So, number one, that acknowledgement that I am a pioneer myself. This is an unprecedented experience. And can I also say that, at the risk of sounding like a philosopher, we are rewriting the destiny of culture, community, country by all of our butterfly actions. We build society together, isn't it? And when you show up as, I'm so proud of you for asking that question. So, and yourself also, sir, for asking that question. So, when you show up, you want to show up in that space. Agreed, you don't have role models, but I assure you, you have resources. You have support you can seek guidance from. And already we have, I think you're still not sleeping. I'm so glad. We have already spoken so much about how that supportive presence can look like, right? So, first is acknowledgement. Second is that it can be a very lonely journey. I recognize that. But I want you to know it's possible. We better make it possible, isn't it? for the person who was going through it, and for generations to come. I promise I'll end now.
Hi, I want to speak about, or rather ask about, the role of friends and family in being support givers. Especially when a couple has been married for a long time, and let's say they have adult children who are at least above 18, 19. Sometimes it is expected that they will become sort of the listening ear to the parents. And then how do they navigate listening to both the sides, the mother and the father, and sort of not choosing sides but being there for both the parents? And what should be the role of parents here? How much should they protect their children from the conflict? How much should they share? So I just want to know what, like, ideally, how should everyone act in such a situation?
Ideal case scenario for parents, not involve children in the conflict. Children shouldn't need to take sides because it's as much as a mother or a father. The conflict is between the parents. It's not between the parent and the child. So when we, as people going through the process of divorce, should be mindful and not bias the children in their thinking of either set of parents, because in my mind, a family or children will require both the mother and the father going forward. So whether the child is adult, young, whatever the age of the child, they will always need both. So the way to approach from a parent point of view who's going through the process of divorce would be to not say anything which would bias the children's view on either parent. Keep it factual, share whatever is relevant to be shared and how it would impact the child's life to that extent. What are the changes the child will experience given the divorce or the separation or the living conditions that they will encounter. But beyond that, they will need to, like the question he put across as how do you reassure actually the child, no matter what age, will require that reassurance from the parent to say that I am here for you. That will always be the case. So it's important to have that version of yourself be present for the child always, because you're their safety net. I hope that answered your question.
I think we'll close now, Radha. I will not give you the mic. No, I was just saying that we have spilled over a lot. So, but then, so we'd like to close here. But thank you so much for adding to the conversation. And this kind of personally makes me feel like a revolutionary to be a part of this conversation. And I sincerely hope that everyone who joined in were able to take at least one thing with them. And yeah, hope you come next time as well. Anything else you'd like to add? Not you. No, I'm sorry, I'm messing with you. With that, thank you so much. We'll just conclude that.